You know, a great philosopher once said, F is for friends who do stuff together. And nothing truer could be said when it came to Sonic Forces. Touted as a return to the more serious type of Sonic story, well, not serious as in Shadow the Hedgehog or Sonic 06 serious, but closer to the adventure games I guess, Sonic and all his friends are back in full force to foil Dr. Eggman's latest scheme. Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces were reviewed at Sonic's anniversary party in 2016, and people for the most part were psyched about it. Although some questioned classic Sonic's inclusion in the game, but like, who cares, Sonic Mania is a thing! And you also need to remember the fact that this was coming off Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations, two very well received Sonic games. They even plugged that this game was coming from the same team in the trailer, so what reason did we have to be concerned? Sonic Forces was going to be a great Sonic game, and we were going to be very happy when it was coming out. Or so we thought. Sonic Mania was released to rave reviews, with it being the most well-received Sonic game since Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Forces, however, was received very poorly. Many people cited its mediocrity as its main detrimental factor, and I agree for the most part. The gameplay is very shallow, much of it being automated or extremely simplistic, and classic Sonic is just sad. How can you feel like an anchor and a soap bar at the same time? The story itself felt unfinished to the point where it was written more like an outline rather than a fully developed story. The game was also relatively short with a 2 to 3 hour campaign. But despite all these flaws, the game had tons of potential. It had a story that could have surpassed the scope of the adventure games. Eggman had actually won. He was able to take over the world, and we could have really seen how our favorite characters would have dealt with living on an Eggman-centered planet. Where was the struggle, the pain, the character development that should have been there from having their lives ripped away along with the disappearance of some of the key members of the cast? But instead, we got things like this.
None of this is good, Vector. That's why it's called war. My spy there says he's in a solitary confinement cell, and they've been torturing him for months.
Whoa! Chaos! Sonic, help me!
But not even expanding more upon that, the game also introduced the concept of a custom character. Now I know OCs have a bit of a reputation in the Sonic fandom, but ultimately, OCs are a part of what Sonic is. Sonic is a great franchise because it's able to inspire immense creativity in its fan base, and I think Forces could have been a really great way to take advantage of that. However, Forces ended up using the custom character as more of a cut and pasted gimmick, where if they were removed from the story, not much would have needed to be changed to keep the story going. And the same can be said for classic Sonic times infinity. Yeah, I really don't like classic Sonic in this. So with all this untapped potential, where does that leave us? Well, my friend, what we're going to do today is start a brand new series on this channel where I remake your favorite or not so favorite games, and we're starting with Sonic Forces. Let's get into it. So let me run down some basic details before we dive into what this game is going to look like. Number 1, I'm shifting focus of the game away from Sonic to the custom character, and by shifting, I mean cutting out both classic Sonic and modern Sonic's gameplay. Now you're probably about to head to the comment section and scream, what? Dislike the video or X out the video, but hear me out. There's a reason I'm making the custom character the sole focus of this game. My friends, with this remake, I want to turn Sonic Forces into an RPG game. The reason I want to make such a dramatic change is because the more I sat and thought about it, the more I realized Sonic Forces has a premise that is perfect for a role-playing game. Sonic Forces is a game about a mad scientist that has finally taken over the world using a mysterious power with unknown capabilities, and the whole goal of this game is to work as a resistance to take back the planet bit by bit until you reach Eggman and save the world for good, or until the next game. There's even a progress bar that shows how much of the world you've conquered so far and how much else you need to take back until the world is saved. RPG games are all about progression. You're upgrading your character using experience points or other things to grow your skills and abilities so you can take on the final boss. Also, if you're leading a team, you're making decisions about your next moves, what places to tackle first, etc, etc. Since the custom character can already equip different abilities, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to add an upgrade system to make the custom character faster and stronger. You also could make the custom character a bigger part of the resistance as the game progresses, and they would be able to make decisions about what the resistance should do that could make your final fight with Eggman easier or harder. And this is just scraping over the surface. Overall, Sonic Forces just provides too good of a setup for an RPG, but instead what we got was a watered down Sonic game with a plot that could easily be expanded upon, but instead was glossed over like it was pieces of paper on the floor. So overall, that's why I would make Sonic Forces an RPG game. And now what we're gonna do is map out the whole game, how you will begin, how the rest of the game will look like, and what the gameplay and story itself will be. So you will start the game with a series of cutscenes summarizing Sonic going to Sunset Heights and getting his ass kicked just like the original game. You will also get cutscenes explaining Eggman's rise to power and how it's impacted the planet. Not a black screen with text! Then you will immediately design your custom character and start playing them from the get-go. Your custom character will be a resident of Sunset Heights, just trying to live day by day in an Eggman-conquered world. In this part of the game, you will spend some time getting to know some of the locals with optional missions to help them with basic needs like obtaining food from robots, kinda similar to how you ease into a Legend of Zelda game. One of your friends will be Cream the Rabbit. I decided to bring Cream back for this part of the game because I think she'd be the perfect person to ease you into the game. I think it's perfectly reasonable for her to live in Sunset Heights, and she will sort of be your guide for this initial part of the game, showing you how the inhabitants live, like getting food and water, what they talk about, and how they have to obey the robots and Phantom Ruby illusions in the area. Eventually, you'll get to the point where Cream is being attacked by Eggman soldiers. You step in and fight them, but being the inexperienced fighter you are, end up losing and you run away while Cream gets captured. Yeah, you're quite the hero. You have the urge to save her, but you don't know how, plus the authorities are now looking for you as well. If you talk to some of the locals before or now, you'll learn rumors of the Resistance. So this next part of the game will be geared towards learning about the Resistance and discovering their location. Eventually you'll run into Amy Rose, who is obviously a huge friend of Cream. You tell her you really want to help find Cream, and Amy then leads you to the Resistance headquarters. The Resistance will now only consist of a few characters, at least at the start of the game: Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. Yes, Tails will no longer go insane over the loss of Sonic, thank goodness. So where did everyone else go? Well, here's where I'm going to introduce a huge plot change. If this wasn't already huge, I feel like I'm already making tons of changes, but you know, we'll just keep them going. The Phantom Ruby is a plot device with unlimited potential in terms of what it could do and what impacts it can have on the game. I thought since they could alter the reality of characters, wouldn't it theoretically be able to perform mind control? And that's why I'm going to make it so everyone else that was a part of the Resistance is under mind control, including Sonic. Now that's a really crazy concept. Like having Sonic on the side of evil, I think is a very interesting concept that could be played really well in this game, so I want to explore that a little bit more. Now, I'll expand upon that detail more a little bit later, but the reason I'm doing this is because of what I said before about progression. The core of the Resistance is literally 4 members at the start of the game: you, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. Tails will serve as a tech geek, obviously. His main role in the game will be doing research into the Phantom Ruby and coming up with strategies on how to advance the cause from a technological standpoint. Since Tails will be handling this, I've decided to make Amy a ground agent. She goes around and keeps track of all the field agents in the various locations of the game to keep them connected to the core Resistance, and Knuckles will still be commander, because I just love the idea of him being the commander. It's about time he got a really cool role like that. But this is all your team is at the beginning of the game, and since I'm really emphasizing the idea of progression, we're going to progress to adding more and more members to the Resistance and becoming more and more powerful and having more abilities and making big dents in Eggman's empire, and ultimately leading up to the final boss where you take him down for good. So that's why I really like this idea of kind of rescuing Resistance members one by one until you get to the point where you get everyone back, or maybe not, depending on what you do, and leading up to the final boss battle with Dr. Eggman. And this wraps up what I call the orientation to the game. You now have a team where each person has different roles, and your goal is to begin taking over territories of the world to combat Eggman's empire until you get to that epic final battle. But before we dive into how you'll get there, I think it's time we actually talk about the gameplay. So I'm going to address a huge point when it comes to gameplay. With classic and modern gameplay completely out of the picture, are we okay with exclusively using the gameplay of the custom character, or do we want to spice things up? Here's my proposal. With this being changed to an RPG game, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to strip the game of any properties of a platformer. There is such a thing as an action RPG, where the game is heavily structured as an RPG game, but the gameplay itself could be whatever you want it to be. The first example I could think of is Mass Effect, which is marketed as an RPG game, but is really more of a shooter with RPG elements. I believe this could work really well for the custom character's gameplay as well, but some changes need to be made to incorporate more intricate RPG elements. I'm firstly going to say the gameplay should be modeled more after the adventure gameplay, and I'm talking about the Sonic and Shadow-ish adventure gameplay. I'm not just saying this because that's my favorite gameplay style, though it is, but I'm also saying this because I think the gameplay style can better incorporate multiple abilities that a custom character may have. The gameplay style is slower paced, and when you have a slower paced gameplay style, you know, you're not trying to speed through the level as fast as possible or being forced to do it. You know, you could have different stage elements and different use of different abilities in a more flexible manner to kind of take control of the various things the custom character could do. I just think it'd be a lot easier from a game design standpoint to incorporate RPG elements if the gameplay was slowed down a little bit. I think the Wisps have the right idea in terms of being able to equip different abilities to your custom character to get them towards different pathways in the levels. I think this idea should be expanded upon even more of the stages. It would increase replay value to an infinite amount. Teehee, which is key in an RPG game. You could invest in learning a bunch of different abilities for your custom character, and learning these abilities can get you to different places in the stage, which can lead you to different outcomes in the game. And you know, the potential of the system is enormous, and so much freedom and flexibility in what the player wants to do with the game could be found through these methods. So it's a really exciting thing to think about. And the interesting thing would be that you could learn and train these various abilities from the different members of the Resistance as well. So different members of the Resistance have side quests you can complete, and the more you do of them, the more abilities you can select from, and the more trained they can be. You can do as many or as little side quests as you desire, but ultimately the more you do, easier the final boss would be for you. So it's completely up to you in terms of how you want to play the game. Some examples I can think of with this is, like I mentioned before, Tails' missions would probably be more focused on Phantom Ruby research, so doing more research into that could kind of help you to master Phantom Ruby abilities a little bit more, or even Tails could give you some more cool gadgets and stuff since Tails is a tech geek. Whereas if you were doing more missions of Knuckles, then you could kind of improve upon your brute strength, because Knuckles is a very big brute strength character obviously, so he could help increase your strength. So kind of just basic ideas like that. I'm not going to go into too much detail of how I would see that going, because then this video would take forever, but you know, that's kind of the idea of what I'm going with in terms of like different characters teaching your custom character different things, and you kind of getting to decide what it is you want to learn. I mean, you could learn everything there is, but the game would take a very long time then if you want to do that. And this is why I really like this idea ultimately. The game would be designed to let you put in as much as you want into it. Maybe you want to play the game like a traditional Sonic game and speed your way through the main quest as quickly as possible. But you can also stop and smell the roses if you like and explore everything the game has to offer. Forces has a lot of potential to be a grand game, but this setup would allow people to play as small or as big of a game as they like, and I think that's the ultimate advantage with this setup, is letting people decide how much they want to put into this game. The game will consist of various hub worlds for each area, one for Green Hill, one for Sunset Heights, one for the jungle, and so on. These hub worlds will have locals and Resistance members where you can take main and side missions from and play the various stages associated with each location. Much like the official game, you may find yourself jumping between different areas. I pictured them to be more like the Unleashed hub worlds, but much more content in terms of story, side missions, and more. Now, with this being marketed as an RPG game, you might be wondering if I'm going to talk about decision making impacting the story of the game. With this being a Sonic game, I don't think it's the most important thing to give the player unlimited potential in terms of altering the storyline, but I do think having some elements would truly benefit the game, especially given the setup where there's a lot of potential for giving the custom character decisions that could impact the result of the game. They could be boiled down to huge decisions that could change the course of the game, or just small things that could change like relationships with certain characters and all that. So it's very diverse in terms of what we could see. One example I could think of for like a big decision, remember that part of the Force's story where Knuckles ran Operation Big Wave? One big decision could be deciding whether you want to launch the attack in a more aggressive manner, or if you want to sneak and do a more stealthy manner, or you don't want to do the move at all and you want to do something else, you know? That's a really big decision that could impact the finale of the game, so I could imagine that being something that the custom character could get to choose, which would be a really cool opportunity. The best part about these decisions is that it would help you as a player immerse yourself into the game and become a part of it. I think that's the most amazing thing about this idea, and I think down in our hearts we all have thought about the idea of like, what if I was in a Sonic game? Like, what would that be like? Like, how would I play? How would I interact with all the characters, etc, etc? And the custom character really allows you to be that vessel and really lets you be immersed into the universe. Now let me talk about another sense of choice on a smaller but more important scale, which could be your relationships with members of the Resistance. I mentioned before doing missions from certain members could train and teach you new abilities. Well, they could also strengthen or weaken your relationship with the character. If you successfully complete enough missions with Tails, for example, you and him may be able to discover more about the Phantom Ruby, and you can also learn more about how Sonic's disappearance may truly be impacting him. But at the same time, if you fail his missions or refuse to do them, then Tails won't open up to you and he won't give you some advantages that you could have gotten if you worked with him more. So you could find as much story as you want with this setup as well, depending on how much you want to put into it. And so that's a really exciting thing to think about. And you could have these same circumstances with other characters, just different plot points, abilities, and final boss advantages would apply. And you theoretically could strengthen the relationship with all your characters or none. Really depends on how you want to play. It's all about letting you devote as much as you want into this game. So say you hated Knuckles, for example, you could just shout off to all his missions or play them and fail them. On the other side, the more missions you fail, the weaker your relationship to that character will be. So, although I don't understand why you would ever want to hate our fearless leader, we truly could spend all day dissecting what the gameplay would be like, but I think this is as deep as I want to go into it. I really want to get back into the story because there's some more interesting plot points I'd like to cover before I wrap up this video. So back to the story. So I mentioned earlier the idea of the Phantom Ruby performing mind control and how all other members of the Resistance have fallen to that. The next big chunk of the game would be about freeing the Resistance members from mind control so that you all can work together to fight Eggman's forces. But a big question you might be wondering is, how can 4 people free the others from mind control if they haven't been able to up to this point? Well, this is where the custom character comes in. Remember how in the original story the custom character came across that Phantom Ruby fragment that basically allowed them to save the world? Well, that's going to still play a major role, except it will be even bigger than before. So the first thing we're going to have you do is launch a mission to save Cream from a small-sized prison in Sunset Heights. While you are doing that, you will 1. Encounter Infinite for the first time, and 2. Stumble across that Phantom Ruby fragment, which will be the reason Infinite is not able to put you under mind control. You will save Cream, have Tails examine that Phantom Ruby fragment, and discover a solution to reversing mind control on someone. This immediately puts your custom character in an important position, because I'm going to make it so that only the custom character can reverse this mind control, because just like the original game, the Phantom Ruby fragment will only work for the person that activated it, and so that person will be your custom character. This immediately puts you in an important position, making you a key player in the Resistance, and I think that's really important in RPG games to make sure that your character that you're playing has a lot of power in terms of like what goes on in the game's story and what goes on in the game itself. And so this is a really great way to make sure that your custom character does have those big roles in the game. And of course, because you're the only person that can use the Phantom Ruby fragment and free everyone from mind control, you're basically the main offense against Infinite and Eggman, which is a really exciting thing for the custom character. And now it's time to start rescuing the members of the Resistance. So I want to divide this next part of the game into 3 segments. In each segment, you will rescue a fair amount of the Resistance, and each segment will end in you fighting a huge boss, which is the main Resistance member that you're gaining control of. And those 3 bosses that I'm gonna make the main people that you're gonna try to rescue are Sonic, Shadow, and Silver. Yes, this is an 06 reference, get over it. And when you defeat Shadow, for example, you will also have rescued Rouge and Omega along the way. And I can envision that like when you're trying to rescue Shadow, you're gonna rescue either Rouge or Omega or both of them first, and then they will help give you a way to get to Shadow. So it's kind of like building up to like the main boss, and that's what a lot of RPG games are really good at, is having these like massive levels with like a lot of things building up to the main event of that specific level. And in this case, it'll be like battling Sonic, Shadow, and Silver in their own specific bosses. When you battle Silver, for example, I can imagine that you would rescue the Chaotix, because, well, I don't know where else the Chaotix would go, so I guess we could just put them with Silver. I mean, Vector is riding with Silver in Team Sonic Racing, so they obviously have some kind of connection. And when you rescue Sonic, I guess we could kind of bring Blaze into the mix, but I don't know, I'm not sure who else we could have in Sonic's corner. But yeah, something to think about. If there's any other Sonic characters you'd love to see in this remade version of Sonic Forces, then let me know in the comment section below. I'd be really interested in hearing if you have any ideas as to how they would be incorporated into the story that I'm trying to build over here. Now, from a story perspective, this could be a really interesting part of the game when you're rescuing different team members, because the way that the Phantom Ruby works is by altering the reality you see. So with these characters, they're not exactly mind controlled in the sense that they're zombies. Rather, their reality has been twisted so much that they feel that serving Eggman is what they must do. Now, this could easily be screwed up by the writing team, but if they can find a way to write the characters in a crazy enough way that makes them reason fighting for Eggman is the right thing to do, you could have some really crazy conversations with these characters and unlock new layers to their personalities that you might have not seen before. Just something to keep in mind for all of you that write fanfics especially. Like, the biggest challenge I can imagine in explaining this kind of scenario would definitely be Sonic. I can't imagine any like reason where Sonic would somewhat reasonably work for Eggman for evil purpose. So I'll be really curious to see if anyone could come up with a reason that Sonic would think working for Eggman in this situation would make sense. You know, with the power of the Phantom Ruby, of course, basically influencing his thoughts. Now, with the team resurrected, you'll begin to come up with a plan to take back the world, and this is where a lot of the hard-hitting decisions can be implemented that could impact the remainder of the game, all leading up to the big fight between you and Eggman that could either end in glory or dread. And yes, it would be possible to lose this game. If you make the worst decisions and to have horrible relationships with all the characters, you could theoretically lose the game and end it with Eggman being victorious. I mean, I think it would be still possible to win under the worst circumstances, but you'd have to be a very skillful player to do so, and you'd have to purposely make the worst scenario possible to even come close to losing the war. But the choice is completely yours, and it totally depends on how much you put into it. And that is my version of Sonic Forces in the shortest nutshell that I possibly could make. So let's go ahead and finally wrap this up. So obviously this game is way more ambitious than Forces could have ever been, and the realistic expectations of seeing anything of this scope from Sega anytime soon are pretty low. But it's a shame, because though Forces was obviously a disappointment, its concept and plot has so much potential in crafting an adventure truly extravagant. Now, I'm not necessarily dying for a Sonic RPG anytime soon, but it would have been a great way to put the focus back on Sonic's friends, as Sonic's friends don't always have to be a hurdle standing in the way of your gaming experience. They can truly add something of value to all games they appear in. Sega just needs to learn how to properly input them without making them so darn offensive. I mean, that's basically why people grew tired of Sonic's friends back in the day when I was a young lad who thought about nothing but the blue hedgehog 24/7. Sonic's friends were a huge focus everywhere you went, and the focus of the game started getting too cluttered. But with this idea, you can make the game as much or as little about the world as you like. You literally could just speed through the levels and play it like a regular Sonic game, or you could stop and smell the roses, get to know the characters and environments in the game, and unlock a whole bunch of secrets. I personally would love to see Sonic tackle the RPG genre again. I know he hasn't had a great history with it, but a lot of Sonic games actually have quite a few RPG elements. Sonic Unleashed with upgrading the Werehog, Forces with the customization, Secret Rings with equipping abilities. Sonic's always dabbled his feet in the genre, and I think Forces setup would have been a great way to bring that to life. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this first edition of DX Games, where I take a video game and remake it inside and out in hopes that it can reach its full potential, become a better better gaming experience. Let me know if you all like my ideas, or if you thought they were terrible. I'm open to the discussion. Also, if you have any thoughts as to what game I should do next, then let me know that as well in the comment section. And they don't have to be limited to Sonic, SpongeBob, or Crash. I'm open to anything. So let me know your thoughts, and I'd be very interested in seeing what games you all would be interested in getting the remake treatment. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to my channel if you like videos like these and want to see more in the future, follow me on Twitter, or join my Discord server, the Spongy Garden. And really, y'all, just thanks for watching. I worked really hard on this, so I hope it was entertaining. I really want to make these better, and I want this to become a staple on my channel. So I really hope you all like this, but if you don't, then that's okay, I guess. And I'm recording this before I know who the winner of the challenge is, so whoever guessed this correctly, congrats on winning. I'm gonna be making a video, which depending on whatever idea you bring up to me, I'm gonna be making a video that you can request. So I'm really interested in hearing what you have from me, and I look forward to the challenge. So yep, and that's everything. This is Riders, riding out.